Well, thank you so much, Alyssa, for organizing this and for bringing us all together. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I hope it's nice weather where you are. I think we're pretty lucky. I was just having a call with my colleagues in the UK, and I think no matter how bad summer is here right now, it's a lot more intense over there because they're hitting record high temperatures of 40 degrees, and they don't have air conditioning, so it's a much tougher. They're not used to those sorts of extremes, but certainly in southwestern Ontario, it's a beautiful day, warm but nice breeze. And although I hear it's been a bit stormy in Manitoba, where everything is back to normal. So, and Rosemary can tell us a little bit about that. My name is Matthew Rowe. I'm the CEO of the Campaign for Wool here in Canada, as well as our parent organization, the Canadian Wool Council. The campaign, for those of you who don't know, the Campaign for Wool was launched in Canada by their Royal Highnesses, the Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall in Pictou, Nova Scotia, back during their 2014 royal tour. And you'll actually be hearing a little bit about their most recent tour, which was the first opportunity to be able to show their Royal Highnesses what we've been up to since that event many years ago. The campaign is the Prince's global endeavor to raise awareness about the unique, natural, and sustainable benefits of wool, and currently runs across 13 different countries. The campaign is our platform for engagement, for education. It's all about showing Canadians the benefits of wool as a natural renewable fiber and the importance of supporting their domestic wool industry. We do an annual program of media activations, events, which we've done from the very beginning, featuring projects in fashion, interior design, and fine art. But where we've really grown in the past few years, certainly through the work of both the campaign and the Wool Council overall, is we've really been looking to develop opportunities, practical opportunities for how we rebrand and revalue Canadian wool and develop opportunities for the Canadians who transform it. We represent the entire wool value chain. That's what really sets us apart from other sort of sheep or maker type organizations. We are here to represent from the producer through to the consumer. And our goal is all about ensuring that not only that people are consuming more wool, using more wool, but they're appreciating it, they're understanding it, they're asking for it, seeking it out. Because we think with all the problems that the world faces, natural fibers is one part of the solution to be living a more sustainable life. That work really has taken form last year when we really put pen to paper and working with partners from across Canada and around the world, we developed the wool industry's very first 5-year strategic plan, our Canadian Wool Plan. Alyssa, if you could share a link to the plan for those of you who haven't seen it. It's very comprehensive, very good bedtime reading, but it really dives into what's holding the Canadian wool industry back, where are the opportunities, and how can we really develop those. It identifies 3 major goals. And so everything we do sort of slots into one of those 3 areas. That's to rebrand and revalue Canadian wool, 2, to advocate for the entire Canadian wool value chain, and 3, to give Canadian wool a voice on the international stage. We've already done a lot of different projects in those areas. For example, a project where one of Rosemarie's pieces was featured was our rug project, where we developed a value chain for 100% Canadian wool carpets, both hand knotted and hand tufted carpets. Those were featured in Architectural Digest with a great image of Rosemarie's bust in the background. But more than just building that value chain and getting some nice media, it was about creating a permanent system to develop those carpets on an ongoing basis, which includes a social give back. So we still have a partnership with that company, which is called Creative Matters. It's based out of Toronto. They're a 35-year-old company that up until a couple of years ago had never produce anything in Canadian wool. Despite being based in Canada, it was just too difficult. They hadn't been able to do it. So we were able to build that value chain for them. And now that's an option for their customers. And what's even better is that every Canadian wool carpet sold comes back to benefit the Canadian industry and to be reinvested in new projects. So that's just one aspect of the work that we're doing. The carpet plan, which came out last year, was another example as part of a recent partnership with the government of Canada, where we're looking at, again, what is Canadian wool very good at, good for in terms of products, where can we add value and make the most money off of it so that we can afford to pay a premium to the producer and as well as the people involved at every step of the way. And where are the export opportunities for that? And so again, Alyssa, if you could share the link to the carpet plan too, that's another great piece of bedtime reading, but really shows that, again, we have the makings of a much stronger industry than we have. But that's more about the future. I think many of you on this call already know that what makes the Canadian wool industry great right now and where the strongest part of the industry is in the artisanal sector. And the incredible talent of our artisans, the versatility of the products being made, of the items being created is really inspiring. And I think that's when you see it at fiber shows, you see that's where the passion is in this industry, and that's where there's a lot of success, where people are able to make money with their wool. So sometimes, again, some of the things we're working on can seem like they're not as relevant, certainly to the artisanal sector, but that's because your part of the industry is already working. What we're trying to do in other cases is to develop opportunities for the wool that isn't as useful in the artisanal market, and the large percentage of wool that right now we're either, well, we used to just send it to China. Now we're not even doing that. And so it's trying to find how we can get better value out of that. But in terms of at the higher end, that's something that where the artisanal sector is doing very well. And nothing has been, personally for me, more inspiring in the artisanal sector, and please don't come at me with your own works, I'm sure they're all very good as well, but in terms of what Rosemarie has done. I mean, when we were first connected, it was through Custom Woolen Mills in Alberta when we were talking about doing a project, and they said, well, you gotta see what this artist out of Manitoba is doing if you really want to see what's possible with Canadian wool. And I was just blown away, and that generated some ideas spinning in my hamster wheel about how we could work together. It happened that year, that was 2020, or we were heading into 2020, was the 10th anniversary of the campaign globally. So we thought, well, what a perfect opportunity to be able to celebrate our patron and the talent of Canadian artisans and the versatility of Canadian wool by commissioning a sculpture of our patron, His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales. The result, I think it speaks for itself. We've got more I don't want to take away. I know Rosemary's going to be showing us lots of great images, but I just wanted to show that because that's where it all began. That was part of our Architectural Digest shoot. That was shot at, for those of you who know interior designer Sarah Richardson, that was shot at her Starlight Farm, which was, she was the designer for our first collection of carpets. So it was a great way of showing different uses of Canadian wool in interior design. Most recently, I had the great honor of introducing Rosemarie to our patron, the Prince of Wales, during his visit to Newfoundland in St. John's at Government House. That was, and again, I don't want to take away from Rosemarie's presentation, so I'll let her kind of speak to that experience. But it was really cool. I mean, for me, again, that was the highlight of that event. We had representation from our interior design work, our fashion work. We had a great group of knitters from an organization we're partnering with in Newfoundland called Nonya, which is a hand knitting organization that's existed for 100 years. But you could tell what the media were all very excited about was the chance for the prince to come face to face with not only his own wool doppelganger, but a new one that had been produced especially for that occasion of Her Majesty, and in honor of the Platinum Jubilee. So anyway, and we can show those images perhaps a bit later, but I don't want to cut into Rosemarie's time. So without further ado, the person that you're here to hear about, our artisanal partner and very talented sculptor in Canadian wool, Rosemarie Péloquin.
Wow, thanks for that introduction. That was great. Can you hear me? Yes, my mic is on, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good. Thanks. All right, so I love to tell stories. And I love that at one point in my artistic career, I was looking for a new medium. And the idea that a class in wet felting with a 10 minutes at the end that where I made a little heart with needle felting has brought me to making a bust of the Queen and the Prince of Wales. So from a little heart to a life-size bust. Love it. I will share with you, I'm just proud to have done my part in capturing the imagination of the country and put fiber art in the news and perhaps given legitimacy to wool as a medium for fine art. I'm just going to share my slideshow now. Hang on. And all right, so what do? I make faces. I sculpt wool. And this is one of the faces I think that Matthew saw when he looked through my things, and kudos for him for looking at all the green and purple and oranges and pinks that I put in faces and thought this person could do a bust of the Prince of Wales. Why wool? I love the feel, the connections to the community of producers, the breeders, the makers. I love the connection to the animals, the land, the history. It feels good in my hands and in my heart, and it feels good ecologically. There are so many possibilities that it gives an artist with the colors, the breeds, the crimp, and they help me tell stories. There's something about holding a cloud of wool in your hands, working with it with a needle and seeing life emerge and change and grow in your hands. The connection to people and life and the everyday world and to so much more all at the same time. These are some of my first wool faces. I imagine that some of those Matthew saw, and yes, the eyes and the teeth are wool too. I work with a 3-inch barbed needle, and I start with wool bats for the base. It's a mixture of Rambouillet and Dorset. They're beautifully layered at Custom Wool and Mills in Carstairs, Alberta, and this wool was recommended to me by a Manitoba wet felter. The finishing wool I use is mostly from Spirit Sands Shepherds in Carberry, Manitoba, who breeds sheep for their exquisite locks. And the locks on the bottom are from Merlin, the Wensleydale Ram, and they made the hair for His Royal Highness. That's the Custom Wool and Mills. In 2017, they had asked me to be the artist in residence for the month of September there. And I really got to see the wonders of wool and the wool community. And it helped me in making my pieces and understanding what I was working with. What's not to love? This is a huge cloud of lovely wool that's ready for the dye bat. And as Matthew said, he phoned them up to discuss possibilities for creating a wool project. and they couldn't help him at the time, but they offered my name. So you never know where your next job will come from. And then he got in touch. And to me, it's a genius idea of making the wool bust of the patron for the campaign for wool. It's brilliant. We discussed the piece. He wanted him in a less formal setting, maybe some tweed, out on his country farm. And so we decided on about what it was going to look like. And after about a week of deer in the headlights, I just told myself, you know what, that's what I do. I make faces. And I got down to work. I gathered a whole bunch of photos from Matthew, from the internet. It's difficult when you're doing from photos, you need to all the angles. So, you know, not necessarily the best photos of him, but it was great to see the neck and the shoulders and how that worked. And just to find out also what the essence of the person is that I was making. I listened to a lot of videos, a lot of his speeches, and I felt I got to know him along the way. The work that he's done for the environment, the circular economy. Recently, he said that he was becoming an overnight success after 40 years of promoting the environment and his work on climate change. Because people now actually want to, they do nod and agree, but they actually want to put money behind it. What I wanted to portray once I felt I got to know what the essence of the person was, I wanted to capture his kind eyes. I wanted him leaning forward just a little bit, listening, and just a bit of a smile to show his keen sense of humor. It did take a long time, and I often work on several different pieces just so that I keep the ideas fresh as I'm working. And I did lose him at one point, lost the look, so I had to put him in the corner for a couple of weeks, but we were still having great conversations about life and its meaning. I'm thankful to Matthew also, who trusted the artist to make a piece that was worthy of the subject and didn't ask for a lot of updates, because it can be scary to have updates. It takes a long time with one needle and to make a life-size bust, and sometimes it doesn't look all that great till it's kind of starts to look like him. At least to me. And then with trials of trying different hair, different locks for the hair, fittings for the outfit, more hair trials, and choice of wardrobe, what it is that I was going to, what he was going to wear at the end. I think the shot that I sent Matthew, actually, when he finally asked, and I had to show him that yes, I was working on something, was when I had lost how he looked. And anyway, it turned out okay. So we get to the finished piece. The tweed coat, that's all hand needle felted also. And the tie I had picked from a photo at the inauguration of the first campaign for wool event in Canada at Pictou. There were several events that had been planned for the unveiling of the bust, and the royal tour of the Prince of Wales for the 10th anniversary. But the pandemic, of course, hit and took the winds out of the sails, but the campaign still had a few exciting things planned. The unveiling with the Lieutenant Governor of Ontario happened online. And a few people were there. And since then, the bust has resided in Toronto and Ottawa, the Privy Council office, the office of the Canadian Secretary of the Queen. Yeah, so the campaign was also looking ahead for different opportunities. This one is the unboxing that Matthew was talking about, and the photo shoot with Valerie Wilcox at Sarah Richardson's home. She took some fantastic photos. And here he is at the residence of the Lieutenant Governor of Newfoundland and Labrador. She was posting on Instagram with a story and a link to the story of the making of the prince on my YouTube channel. And I love the one on the right because she was having a lot of 100-year-old people for their birthdays and celebrating that, and posted this one. And I just find they look alike. They have the kind of the same little grin. And it just makes me happy to see my pieces in situ with people enjoying them. And the campaign was always looking ahead for opportunities. You know, it's not going to let the pandemic stop them. So they decided that, well, there's a Queen's Jubilee coming. So eventually the pandemic will be over, and maybe there'll be a royal tour in the future. So I was asked to make a wool bust of the Queen. And again, a lovely opportunity for me. Again, we discussed what they wanted. There would be no hat. And actually that would give me the chance to use wool to really show off her her signature coif. And we also said that there would be no bling, but I wanted to make the pearls, the pearl necklace that she wears often, and the pearl earrings, so that that would show up well with the wool. Again, I did a lot of research on her and who she was and what she did and what she said, so that I could get the essence of the person. Again, scary in process photos. One thing I did decide was that I wanted the pin, the maple leaf pin that she wears, to be on her lapel, because I wanted to just add that wherever she goes, the bust, that little Canadian pin would be on there, and showing that the wool was from Canada. I portrayed her a little younger than the present. I'd walk into the studio every morning with this lovely smile. What a way to start the day. Again, had lots of great conversations with her. Then we end up with a finished piece. The base was a problem with the prints, because I had not in my mind actually figured how it would be sitting on a table when I had figured out the concept. And so it took me a long time to find a base for the prints, and it ended up being some elm. And it worked really well with his tweed and the, you know, the kind of relaxed feeling that we had with that one. And it was a bit the same for the Queen's bust. She was, I had a piece given to me from, it was 100-year-old beam from a house in Manitoba. And I thought, what a beautiful way of showing her the monarch who's, you know, holding together the Commonwealth and all of that, and everything that she does would be on this beam. But it broke in the spinning and the making of it. So I tried again with a wonderful piece of wood that came from BC that was donated by an artist, and unfortunately that one broke as well. So it all ended up well. We ended up with a black ash tree that had fallen in Treeherne, Manitoba, and was prepared for me. So turned out okay after all. What else? I did get the okay at I got the message from Matthew that, oh, we may have a royal tour and they may have you come with to present the busts. And the Queen was not quite finished. And at that time, of course, it was too late to send the piece in an art van. Air travel, as you all know, it was fraught with cancellations and lost luggage and delayed flights. And so I traveled with the Queen sitting beside me, and we ended up staying on the tarmac, being late and staying on the tarmac for hours. But of course it was with a plane full of friendly Newfoundlanders and listening to Toronto Maple Leafs series and cheering and all of that. So how Canadian is that? The Campaign for Wool organized a room full of imaginative wool people to show off wool for their patron. It was a friendly, creative, warm room full. What's not to love again? We had a briefing the day before. There was an overview of what was going to happen and what was expected, and we got to meet the makers and the designers. I was taken aback by how much I had missed the first bust. I hadn't seen him for over a year and a half. And when I saw him at Government House, so he needed a few little touch-ups after his travels. And yeah, it was just because I have a relationship almost with my pieces, it was just lovely to see him again. I was a little bit worried also about how they would look together, because the concept had not been thought of together and that they would sit together. And I didn't have him there as I was making the bust of the Queen. But they looked okay. And we had also the people that were working with the tour were touring the place and getting their briefing as well. And so that gave us the help to see how we could take photos and just answer questions and feel comfortable in the room. I talk about how I missed the prince and how it touched me to see him again. Whether they're portraits or not, I enjoy my time in the studio with them, and I feel I get to know them. And the wool has its say also. It's a collaboration as far as I'm concerned with, you know, the curls and the crimp that doesn't want to quite, they want to add their own little bit to the portrait. And I find the act of needle felting also, it's similar to pointillism, and it adds to the overall meaning because there's the pushing and the pulling and makes the wool tighter and tighter. And to me, all these small gestures that I make in building the piece is the same thing as all the small gestures that everyone in a community does to build up the community and build up the fabric of their lives. And art can do that, and it strengthens the fiber of the community. And kudos to the Campaign for Wool for adding art and artisans to their plans. Yeah, just preparing to say goodbye the day before, and they're looking good together. I was happy. And there's always the thankless jobs that need to happen. Matthew working away after we had set everything up and everyone was gone, and just making sure that all the fine little details are done just so that everything goes well. And then the next day we were set up again, and there was a lot of waiting. There's Matthew waiting in front of the display, the weaving and the wool rugs, in front of the Nonia Knitters table of gifts. And anyone who works with wool knows that if you've got wool with you, you're always busy and your hands are busy as well. So this was before the crush of all the other reporters that came in as well. And the bus waiting at the doorway for His Royal Highness to come in. And he arrived, and Matthew introduced him to each one of us, the representatives from Creative Matters, who made the rug, lined the label, that has to do with wool fashion, Canadian Wool Council, and the Nonia Knitters. I was the last one in the room for him to meet. And I found that the Prince was so gracious. He was interested, funny, knowledgeable. He spoke to every one of us. And I felt that he was genuinely interested. He was focused on me and on the works. I know I was told afterwards that there was a crush of people saying, you know, we got to get going behind me. But I did not feel that at all. He was very interested in what we were doing. And after watching him interact with everyone in the room and speaking with him myself, I felt that I'd done him justice in my sculpture. It was amazing to be able to talk about my process, the technique, the wool, and also to explain what the intent was for the piece. I'm not sure that a lot of artists get to do that with their portraits of royalty. And he showed genuine curiosity and interest in how it was made. He wanted to know if it was all wool, and I was ready with my ball of wool and my needle and showed him how it started and how it was built up. He asked if I had worked off of one photograph, so I was able to tell him that I got to know him basically as he was spending all this time in my studio, and he laughed out loud at that one. And I got to say again how I had portrayed him. And the other point where he really laughed out loud was when I told him that the locks for his hair were from Merlin, the Wensleydale ram, and the hair from his mum was from a Cotswold sheep. The experience was over quickly, but it was worth a lifetime of memories. I love this photo. I'm not sure what he said here, but it's a great photo. And to me, it shows the type of person that he is also, that he's focused on the people that are there and that we're important to what, you know, because he's there meeting with us. So as an artist, it felt great. I loved the Newfoundland people, loved what I saw of Newfoundland as well. I had taught some classes there when I was working for Parks Canada, and to me it felt like I was in the prairies with just the view across the ocean is like the prairies, but also the people were as friendly as the prairie people are. I love wool and I love my work and I love making faces. During the pandemic, I was not lonely. I had all these faces that I was working on, and I'm also working on needle felted hands. So I had lots of hands to hold. So as I'm making, I surround myself with other people and their thoughts, and it's good for the soul. And when you're touching wool, that's even better. what happens next? There's a video that is almost done on the making of the Queen bust. And there's a lot more that I had to say on how I felt when I was making her and why and how it all came together. So I'm sure that Matthew will be telling you when it'll come out. That one will be on the Campaign for Wool's YouTube channel. So what's next? Well, I had a messy studio to walk into, and actually it's always messy, I guess. But I'm ready for more projects after having found my inner hermit for a little while. I'm still having a blast. I haven't forgotten that I'm already yesterday's news, and I will continue to do artwork as I see fit. And I hope that people will continue to react to my pieces as they will, and that they'll stimulate some conversations, because I find that I get ideas for my next pieces from what people say about my work and what they see in it. If I can share my passion, I'm happy. And I know that I'll miss the Queen, her smiling face in my studio. Yeah, so I often think back. I was trying to think of words of wisdom to say, but I think back of a juror's comments after a show. I was telling him that I couldn't often find a place for my work in juried show submissions. And he basically said, just keep putting your work out there and they'll catch up eventually. So happy to have put wool and fiber art out there and given it some legitimacy. So I am going to just escape from here. Here we go. And quit sharing. Oh, here we go. Hang on. There, did I quit sharing? Okay. There we go. So I didn't want to talk too long because I thought if there are questions, you want to be there to be able to talk about it. And once I start talking about art, look out.
Thank you so much for that. We loved hearing about your experience with working with wool and meeting Prince Charles. The video is still, the release date is tentative. If you want to stay posted on it, just follow the Campaign for Wool. Instagram or Facebook is probably your best bet. We're going to do a question and answer period now. So if you have a question, please raise your hand and use the hand up feature just under reactions, or just in the chat's fine as well. And we'll give that a few minutes for people to write up their questions or raise their hand.
Maybe while we're waiting for the questions to queue up, I will. I'm just going to share quickly because we do actually have the video as well. It's just some of the magic. I don't know. It does. Sometimes it's a bit choppy, but so you can see some of the excitement in action. There we go. But it was, I mean, just to echo what Rosemarie said, it was such a very special opportunity and a great chance. This was, as I mentioned, the first chance where we are able to report back to our patron in person and on Canadian soil. So we have had some opportunities in the UK, but not in Canada. And so to be able to do it in Newfoundland, which is such a special place, in that beautiful room at Government House, and thank you to the Lieutenant Governor of Newfoundland for hosting us there. It was just such a really special opportunity and a great way of celebrating Her Majesty's Platinum Jubilee year here in Canada. So I think that part was longer. Oh, there it is. There's the actual action.
Yeah, at some point, I didn't think that he had noticed the Queen very much, but after the photos and that, I see that he did focus on her a bit.
Yes. And for those of you, Rosemarie mentioned it a bit, but you saw at the beginning, there was me sort of smiling, and then I did like a little bit of bow. It's because you can't really see it, but behind the door there was this whole crush of people. And I at first just recognized someone from the tour group, but then I realized standing right in front was the Duchess of Cornwall. And so I did my bow, but she was very much focused on him. And she was like, oh, we're running behind, like tapping her watch and like, come on. And he again, just he didn't rush. He just continued to talk. And anyways, it was such a, he's very good at giving everyone the time that they deserve. So let's see, we have got some questions.
Yeah, he was very in the moment, and you didn't feel like he was in a rush. So very interested, I think, in what you had to present too. So that's good. Would have loved to have a lot more room or a lot more time, but hey.
Yeah.
We just have a question from Sandra. Sandra, you can go ahead. Oh, you're on mute. You just need to...
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. My question, Rosemarie, is about the mechanics. How is the bus secured to the base?
Okay, it is a metal rod that goes through the neck and the skull. So that's the only metal piece that's actually in there. So I wrap it very tightly around that rod so that it shouldn't move too much. And then I'll start adding the wool with the needle. And then there's a hole in the base and indented at the bottom. And so then you can put a nut at the top and at the bottom so that it's secured that way. And then it's got a felt bottom to it.
So you actually include the metal rod in the foundation of the piece rather than putting it in afterwards?
Yeah, well, the felting tightens it so much that I would not be able to stick it in there after the fact. I'm not sure how I would do it. And if I would, then it wouldn't be secured properly around it. So I had to think of, okay, how am I going to do that? Because a lot of the busts that I do are either bas-relief and they're on a wall, so I can attach them to a backing, or I have the shoulders just with a flat bottom so that the wool sits on the table. So that was
thanks, because I wet felt sculptures, and I always, because I'm a blacksmith as well, I always use galvanized steel, but that doesn't apply when you're needle felting because you're doing it dry, right? So yeah. It was just a question that you've answered perfectly. Thank you.
Okay, good.
So Sharon is in the chat. She says you have a lot of interesting pieces on display. Is there time to show them? I think she's asking if there are any pieces that are, if you're in your studio, you have around that you can show us.
Here's one of my neighbors. It's a series that I made. Again, opportunity knocks in interesting ways, because I got a call from a gallery, and she said, I have someone who isn't coming with their stuff. Do you have something that would fill a corner of the gallery? I said, sure. And then she sent me a picture, and it was basically cubes that were about a foot wide. I had nothing that would fit that small in there. So I thought, okay, well, that makes faces. I can make small ones. And so I started the Neighbors series. And these are all numbered. I'm into the 60s now. And they're a bit about, the idea behind them is that they're the wallpaper in our lives. We're all so busy and we're all just go, and you don't notice a lot of these people. And I wanted to capture them with my larger faces. I find the eyes attract people. I'll see people walk across a gallery and go, whoa, and check the eyes out. And the small ones too, I wanted people to stop and to look people in the eye, and it worked. I mean, people were, oh, that's so and so, and that's so and so, and that's so and so. Well, it isn't, but sometimes for example, I had one gal who bought a piece who said, "This is my dad. It doesn't look like him at all, but he always has his hand like this and that expression. And so this is him." And the ones behind me are two-dimensional. They are reclaimed wool and wool coats, or wool skirts or wool fabric. And I take wisps of colored wool and make the faces with that. It's not like what a lot of the wet felting that I've seen that has, you know, a thickness of the wool. This is very wispy. And I use the color of the background as well to that comes through. So there might be again green in the face and purple, and thanks Matthew for not being afraid of that. Although there wasn't much green and blue, there is a little bit still, but yeah, depends on the piece. Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
And are all your sculptures, are they usually people, real life people, or are they people you're just kind of have in your mind?
I think I've been looking at faces a lot. I love faces. I love faces that have jowls and big noses. And I've always loved my, you know, being around my aunts and uncles and grandpas and all of that. And what I do is I start with an expression. Often, is that person going to be sad? Well, you know, maybe that'll shape the shoulder or the lean of the head. Are they going to be looking up and being surprised or that kind of thing? And sometimes they change. And yes, sometimes I think, oh, okay, I'm going to make this woman. Well, whoops, all of a sudden I'm making it and it changes into a man, and then it changes into a woman, and then comes back, and then I try on different hair, different locks, different colors, and it just changes again. And, you know, a few pokes of the needle and went from sad to, you know, sneering or happy or whatever. And so that's what keeps me interested in making them again, and the surprise all the time of what comes. I don't have total control. The wool has some control, and I think there are people in my head that come out because I will see people that I know in some of them, but there is always someone that comes to see them and goes, "That's so and so." And I don't know, I do portraits, but you know, it's most of the ones that I do are just, they occur as I'm making them.
It's really interesting. Thank you for sharing. Any more open the floor? Any more questions for Rosemarie?
Did we cover the time frame to complete? Sorry if I missed that.
No, I had about a year to make each one, right? And I don't always work on the one piece, especially the larger ones, just making the first ball of wool, and that just takes a long time. And the research behind the actual person, and how is it that I want to, again, the essence, and what kind of expression will they have, because even that, because it's on the rod already, I have to know ahead of time, because will the head be bending forward or backwards or sideways or whatever. And so and I always work on a lot of different pieces, again, because if I'm only focused on one, I find that you can miss it sometimes. If I'm working on different ones, then it's exciting, because, you know, my mind, yes, I'm working on it with my hands, but my mind is off somewhere else, and ooh, this is where I can move the piece now. And then, so I'll jump to that one and work on it. So depends.
Yeah.
A week, 2 weeks, a year.
Well, just so people know, so start planning for Christmas 2023. You can get your orders in now.
Well, I've done a couple for their 50th wedding anniversary, and when I revealed it to the son-in-law who was going to offer it as a gift, he just went, "Oh, this is going to be the best gift. We've outdone everyone." I had to laugh.
Well, there's certainly a lot of competition, even within, you mentioned some of the places where the busts have gone. And I saw a message in the chat, I think it was from Elizabeth, who must be in St. John's. The busts are still on display at Government House there. So if anyone is planning to be in Newfoundland and in the St. John's area, they do tours at Government House, which is the Lieutenant Governor's residence. And both of the busts are still on display there for the next month or so. And then they're going to start to go other places. We'll let you know. But there, I was going to say, there was definitely a lot of competition in the previous places. People, once they had them, they didn't want to give them up. And so we had to really pry them out. Like when it was at the Secretary to the Queen's office, who was based in the same building as the Prime Minister's office, he did not want to send that to Newfoundland. We had to really no, it's important. We need to, unfortunately, we have to take it away. But they love the pieces so much. And even though the pictures are great, but when you see them in person, it's a completely different experience. And I can speak as well quickly to the eyes. I see we've got another question. But before we started to send the prince on his tour, it came to my house first, and so just before it was being sent off to other places. And so there was a period where it was sitting sort of at eye level in my living room, and there was a couple times where I walked in and it was like I thought the prince had broken in. It gave me sort of a bit of a start standing there, because it's just so realistic, and the light just hit it just right. So anyways,
so it's not that crazy when I say that I have conversations with them.
Oh no, not at all, not at all. And they are life size again. So if you can't quite see the scale, in fact, they're probably even a little bit bigger than life size.
Yes.
So again, they're quite substantive pieces when you see them in person.
Well, it's interesting too, because the plan was to make them about 3/4 size. Yes. To life size, and it's not like you can erase or paint over or something, they just, because I make the first kind of the skull and then start adding the features, then it often becomes a little bit larger than what I started off making. So yeah. And the one fellow in Newfoundland was saying that when they were doing the rounds and making sure that people were away out of the building at the end of the day, that they would kind of start and think, oh, there's someone in this room. And there was the bust.
Yeah.
We just have one last question from Maureen, who raised her hand. Oh no, she took her hand.
No, I do. Sorry. I have fat thumbs. I was trying to unmute myself as well. So Rosemarie was talking about some of the wool breeds that she used in creating the pieces. So I've worked with quite a few of them, but I was curious about Dorset in particular, what she finds the qualities of Dorset bring to the table in terms of needle felting.
I am not the one who knows very much about the wool itself, although I talk to a lot of people who are the producers and the breeders, and I learn something every time. What I find, the way I can explain it is that the way that it has been processed in the bats is very good for needle felting for me. It's not over processed, so there's still it's easy for me to needle felt it quickly. If a lot of people, when I give classes, they love the top because it's so soft and everything. Well, that's been over processed for needle felting. I find that you're giving yourself more work because they're all pulling the same direction, right? And so you've got to redo that work in making those connections with the fiber to put it together. And I unscientifically go by feel. And how, like, I'll go to a fiber festival and kind of go touch and go, okay, this one, I love this one for this, and I love this one for that. And that's just from working with it. And like I say, the the wool bats were suggested to me by a wet felter, actually, who was using them, loved it, the bats because of the way they were put together, and said, I think you might like these. And so that's what I started with. And probably it's a bit of working with it for a while and knowing what it will do. So,
okay.
Yeah, so the actual breed and why I would, you know, say, talk to someone like you or Jerry Oliver or someone else who will be able to tell me, you know, the length and look at this crimp. And like, I will go by eye. I love this. This will be this. And I'll go by feel. And for example, when at the beginning, someone asked me, why do you only make men? And I hadn't thought of that. And so okay, so, you know, it's interesting. Yeah, all the bigger faces that I had made at the beginning were men. And so when I went to the Manitoba Fibre Festival, I saw some wool that was dyed, you know, that nice blue that older women have in their hair when their white hair is dyed. Well, I thought, okay, that, and then right beside it was this beautiful pink and orange, and I thought, oh, this is my mère. And I thought, okay, this is going to be my first woman. And so I started making women and buying wool also, like that just changes your eye when there's that relationship with the people who look at your things and tell you what they see, and then that gives you ideas. And so I started making women, and then the next comment that kind of hit me was, oh, all the women are happy and all the guys are grumpy. And again, it was kind of like, oh, that's interesting. And it, you know, you keep on going. And with these neighbors series, luckily they were all numbered, because I would say that 50-50 people will think that it's a male or a female. And, you know, they're cut at the bust. I will not tell them what they are, or in my head, because I find it fascinating that they will see who they see, whether male or female. Whereas I might think that's definitely a male or that's definitely a female. So there's that androgynous, and in this day and age, that's actually quite interesting that can happen.
Well, thank you so much, Rosemarie.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for the question.
Maureen actually puts on some great wool felt. I don't know if it's limited to felting, but if you're in Winnipeg, she does put on some great events if you're able to attend. It looks like we have a question from Giselle. I hope I said that right.
I saw from the chat that Giselle is in Guelph, which is not far from where I am right now in Glen Williams. So shout out to the local neighbor.
I'm not sure if she accidentally put her hand up. Giselle? Okay.
Or can't be unmuted.
Oh no, she's connecting to audio. Okay. Oh,
There we go.
okay. I'm not sure.
So Matthew, while we're doing this, make sure that you let us know where they end up or where they're going to end up, so that if people are in the area, they can pop in and take a selfie.
We've got a waiting list, actually. Well, certainly I think the next place they'll be going is Manitoba, actually, because Her Honor in Winnipeg would like to have the bus at Government House there. So and Her Honor is actually featured in the video that we produced about the piece that will be released in the not too distant future. So I think Winnipeg's probably the next destination. And then we're also negotiating where they'll end up finally. So with the Prince, we know he's going to end up at the Willowbank School for for traditional building, which is in Niagara, what's in Queenston, Ontario, part of Niagara on the Lake, which is one of his patronages. So it's going to go into their new library there. But we're still finding an appropriate home for Her Majesty. We're hoping that it'll end up in the Crown Collection. So we want it to go to Rideau Hall. So cross fingers, but we'll keep everyone in the loop there. I'm just conscious of time.
Just a comment, if it is,
Yeah.
if the Bust of the Queen is coming to Manitoba in September, there'll be lots of people in and around Winnipeg because it's the Fibre Festival, Manitoba
Okay.
Fibre Festival also. So we'll be able to certainly tell everyone about it as well.
We'll have to time for that then. Although again, Her Honor in Newfoundland is going to be she really loves the pieces, and so it's going to again be difficult to pry them out of her hands. But they must, more people must see them. So
I think Giselle just had a comment that she's sharing in the chat. I think she knows Rosemary's family, but she says, just want to share that I've seen Rosemary's family in many of her people and faces. So that's interesting. Maybe you're creating them subconsciously.
Well, I think I have been gathering all these faces and over the years. I was saying the other day that at one point I was at my brother-in-law's and said, can I take a picture of your neck in the back? And he was just, what? And it's just kind of, you know, there are certain things that you go, oh, that looks great. And you know, maybe I'll use that the way that slopes or something in the next piece. Yeah, and putting all of them together, like sometimes I feel there is a really strong family resemblance to a family here, and nobody in that family sees it. So I think it's all it's a lot of how what we register as people, what's maybe important at the time. And yeah, and you know, anybody who wants to start needle felting, yay, it's the best thing to have the wool in your hands. And I know that in Manitoba there's, you know, there's starting to be a lot more breeders and the mini mill and a lot of dyers, and there's a lot of interest here, and the Manitoba Festival is really, really good.
Thank you again so much, Rosemarie, for being our inaugural speaker. This is the Spinning Yarn Speaker Series. Yeah, a round of applause. The Spinning Yarn Speaker Series. This is the very first. This came from, again, from some of the feedback we had in our town halls that we want to be having more regular points of engagement. We heard from you that you don't want us just popping up for Wool Month in October, or when we have a big report or something, that you want these more regular points of engagement. So we're planning to do this on a monthly basis, having speakers from the entire value chain. So I can say we haven't confirmed the date yet, but the next speaker will be one of our advisory council members, Jacob Murray of Topsy Farm in Kingston, Ontario, who's going to be speaking from the producer perspective, and a really amazing operation that they have there on Amherst Island in Lake Ontario. So this is so stay tuned for the next one. Again, if you ever have any questions about our work, what we're up to, you want to get involved, Alyssa, if you can just drop your email in the chat, get in touch with us. We're here to serve the community and to really grow, again, the services we provide. Another thing to look out for those of you who are artisans, makers and sellers, we'll be rolling out our 2022 retail point of sale program towards the end of the summer. So for those of you who want kits that will have materials to support sales in your store, little table talkers, tags, postcards, things like that, be sure to get in touch, because we'll be putting those together to get out in early September. So again, thank you to everyone for taking the time to speak to and listen to Rosemarie.
Yeah, thanks. And I'm glad that I got to, pass the technology of, we had a big storm here and that didn't have electricity for 2.5 hours and was madly scrambling. So hopefully it turned out okay.
It was fabulous.
Thanks for your interest.
So thank you again for everyone. And remember to continue to feel better and choose wolf. All right. Thanks again.